This is a 15-year-old story. In those days, Asif and Rizwan were medical students. Once in the class, they were reading about the human structure when the teacher's voice came. Dear student, Kurdi, we denari urnichin and watin of honemern. It's 3 on an inorna. Turianiver fernaniman. A sureur, der Venwasernitubu, mini the newanam. Tenagina fonerin, Turishinanan, Kirfananawarn. They both opened the book and wrote an essay on the human structure. While reading, suddenly Asif spoke. If we bring a human skull from somewhere, our work can be done. We can remember the names of the structure of the skull well by keeping the skull in front, Rizwan said. Hey brother, what we are putting in front of the photo and information of the skull from our mobile screen can't be talked about, Asif replied. The thing held in the hands of Dr. Rizwan of the future is something else. That is, everything is on the net, but it is only to the extent of the mobile screen. Listen to me. You will understand how easily we can remember our test when we hold the skull in our hands and consider the structure of the bones in it. They are mandatory. Otherwise, we got low marks in the test that was conducted 2 months ago, and our teacher, Dr. Ayaz Sahib, was very angry with us. After listening to Asif's speech, Rizwan also agreed that if the skull is found somewhere, it will be really easy for him, he said while closing the internet. So, doctor? Asif, sir, these skulls are not sold in the market, so my sweet friend, where will they come from? Asif said. Brother, the only solution to this matter is to contact the gravedigger of the cemetery outside the city. He is also a little familiar with me. I will do it tomorrow on a holiday. To come tomorrow evening, we will walk together. On the evening of the second day, Rizwan and Asif reached a cemetery outside the city on their bikes, where Asif was familiar with the gravedigger. When Asif knocked, he opened the door. Seeing Asif, he recognized him and said, Kirtu hai Nasif Babu. How did you come today? There is no death. Asif said, cutting him off. No. Wetkinnowernorm, Wudadur Nana Yarudurmurm, Neriinon, Drinawan, Arhadiwers, Eatwaspornadurnam, Kanurain, Adaranin. I am alone today anyway. My wife has gone to her parents' house with the children. Saying this, Gravedigger brought them both to his simple sitting room. As soon as they sat down on 4 legs, Gravedigger went inside the house to get the bottle despite their prohibition. After some time he appeared, and they saw a 1.5-liter bottle of liquor in his hand, salt on a plate, and 3 glasses. After drinking the bottle and eating some salt, Asif came to his point. First he introduced Rizwan, then he told about studying in his medical college, and then he came to the real point, when he said to Gravedigger, "We need a human skull." Then Gravedigger looked at them both in shock. At the same time, Asif forced a 500 rupee note into his pocket. Gravedigger at first apologized for removing the skull, but when Asif assured him that he was not taking the skull for any wrong purpose. He is a medical student, and he really needs a skull to use in educational activity. So Gravedigger agreed to take out the skull. Okay, sir, but some more price will have to be paid for it. Asif gave him another 500 rupees, then he told them to come at 10 o'clock at night. They went back and came home. Rizwan said to Asif, Asif, for the first time, I will go to the cemetery so late at night that no soul will touch me. So Asif laughed and said, Abe Gamar, do I go to the graveyard day and night? Am I a shroud thief? Don't be afraid, Gravedigger will be with us. Around 9 o'clock in the night, Asif asked permission from the family for 2 hours on the pretext that one of their messengers had fallen from a bike and was injured, and he was going to see him at the hospital. Rizwan would also be with him. He allowed it, but the shadows of doubt could be clearly seen in his eyes. Khair Sahib, when he left the house, lightning was still shining in the light clouds. He took Rizwan with him when he left the city. As we turned onto the road to the large cemetery, the weather became more gloomy with light winds and lightning. Gravedigger House was close to the cemetery. Gravedigger took him with him. Gravedigger was holding a digging hoe and a torch in his hand. As they entered the gate of the cemetery, when lightning flashed, for a moment they saw a long row of graves. Then the hearts of both of them started beating with fear, and a wave of fear started running in them. Rizwan thought for a moment that he should go back, but then finding the courage to be with his friend, he also moved forward. The trees of the cemetery would be visible in the bright lightning, otherwise their shadows would look dark black, as if many witches were standing together. "Sir, this grave belongs to a Walker Sahab, and I have seen that his heirs rarely take care of it." The shovel that he was holding in his hand, he started removing the soil from the grave. Asif Babu grave digger said while giving instructions. "You should put this torch only on this grave and do not light it here and there." Rizwan was standing on one side watching this terrible cemetery. He was sweating because of fear, but the water was not going back for fear of dishonor. She pulled it out, and then in a few minutes the grave was opened. Now the heart of Asif, holding the torch, also panicked with unknown fear. He did not have the courage to look inside the grave by the light of the torch. He asked Gravedigger a question to pass the time. "Kamardin, you are not afraid in the graveyard," he said. "Sir, if we are afraid, then how will our children's stomachs be filled? This is the work of our fathers, which I am doing now." After some time, when Gravedigger took his hand out of the grave, seeing the skull held in his hand like a melon, Rizwan and Rizwan Asif also got scared. Gravedigger took out a black cloth bag from his pocket and put the human skull in it. Then he kept the bag on one side and started to close the grave. After some time of hard work, the grave was closed. Then Gravedigger again put the soil on the grave, and he started to say with his hands, "Take this, sir, what you want." Asif was now nervous while holding the bag in his hand, but as soon as he took courage, he felt like his own living skull was resting on his shoulders. It was filled with heat. This series of heat soon ended, but both of their hearts were still feeling nervous. When he reached Gravedigger House, he caught the remaining 5 swarups. After starting the bike, the bag with the skull hung on one side of the bike. When they came to Rizwan's house, Rizwan got off. Then Asif gave the skull to Rizwan. At first, Rizwan was afraid, but when Asif told him, "You have a cupboard with a lock, you should keep it in the cupboard and lock it. The lock of my closet is broken, so anyone in the house can see it." After hearing this reason, Rizwan agreed to keep the skull with him. He went inside the house and locked the first bag in the closet. After eating food, etc., he was going to sleep when suddenly he heard a loud scream. He panicked and went out of his room and saw his elder brother lifting his younger son from the ground. "What happened, brother?" said Gabra. At that time, he saw blood coming out of his nephew's head. "What happened?" He walked, or soon he realized that his nephew was entering the exit from the courtyard when the middle piece of cement from the ceiling broke off on his head. There was a head injury. The local doctor of the Fatafat neighborhood was called, who took the child to his small clinic and bandaged him. "Thank God that the head bone is not broken," said the local doctor. When the child was brought back home, it was late at night, when the medicine that was given to the child was included in the sedative, when he started to sleep. Rizwan came to his room thanking God that the child was saved. Coming to the room, he got a strange thought that since Asif and he had taken out the dead man's skull from the grave, it might be that the child in the house has got an injury on his head. Is this a punishment or revenge for the dead man? He was just thinking that Asif's call started ringing on his mobile phone. Asif first inquired about the welfare of little Mian on the phone. That's when Rizwan told him his idea. Maybe the spirit of the dead is taking revenge on us. When his nephew got hurt on his head, Asif laughed a lot after hearing this. "Hey, Dad, this is the 4th generation in the 21st century. There are no spirits taking revenge. Isn't it the 1800s, where you are scaring me with the dead and spirits? If this is the case, how will you do medicine in the future? You will run away from the hospital after seeing your patient, if he died for some reason." He laughed heartily. Finally, he hung up the phone saying, "My plan was to take out the lost one and put it in front of me to think about its structure. If the dead man wants to take revenge or threaten me, then scare me. The skin is going to make them come true." "Okay, goodbye, doctor." Rizwan. "See you tomorrow. I will come to you at 10 o'clock. After saying this, he hung up the phone. Rizwan also hung up the phone and kept it aside, and then he fell asleep thinking that, "I am afraid for no reason." Fear. Rizwan's phone rang with a loud sound. He was about to wake up a little from deep sleep. Then he stretched out his hand to see who was calling him in this bad weather. He turned off the phone and fell asleep. When He had just slept for 15 minutes when the door of his room opened with a bang. Rizwan was woken up by the hoarse voice of his elder brother. When the voice of Rizwan's elder brother came to his sleeping mind, he woke up, sat down. "What happened, brother?" Rizwan, wake up quickly." When Rizwan woke up from deep sleep, it occurred to him that his nephew's condition is not worse. "Is Wasim okay?" he asked. Yes, Wasim is fine. You come out quickly. You have to go to Asif." "Why did Garigam Kuryabuwan Kervarawana Kanane Maria then Kinuwaran Airmainanan the Ramir Nainawan Mironakinanamin Nadermaid Kamantamanamen? We and Asif's father also called you, but you turned off the phone." Then he informed us about Emernice. "Asif is no longer in this world." Paya dropped a bomb on Rizwan. "What happened to Asif?" Be patient, my brother. Asif was sleeping in the room that night when suddenly a loud noise came from his room. When his two brothers and father went to his room, they saw a horrible scene from the ceiling of the room. The fan is broken and fixed on Asif's head, and helpless Asif left the day after his skull was broken while he was sleeping. While he was unconscious, the only thing running in his mind was that the skull of the dead man had been taken out by those friends. Finally, he took his revenge on Asif. Now it is his turn. Asif's skull was broken and he left the world, but the dead will not leave him. When Rizwan regained consciousness, the funeral of his dearest friend, he was ready even though his condition was very bad, but he stubbornly saw the dead body of his friend. The face was hidden under the clothes because the skull bone was broken so the face could not be seen. Was coincidentally, Asif's funeral also went to his graveyard from where the skull was removed 24 hours ago, and his grave was also in the same row where Asif and Rizwan had taken the skull from an old grave. Rizwan was not taken to Asif's funeral because his health was bad due to immense shock. For the people, Asif's tragic death was due to the fall of a fan, but Sam Rizwan, lost in shock, knew very well that this fan had also fallen due to the revenge of the dead, and it had also fallen in the same place, i.e., on the scalp. They had also taken out the skull of the dead person. 3 or 4 days after Asif's death, Rizwan's health improved a little, so he took out the bag containing the skull from the cupboard. Then suddenly he felt that the light was coming out from the place of the eyes of the skull. He came out and pretended to be the family of the bike start and came towards the road of the cemetery. So it was found that he is working in the southern corner of the cemetery. It was Rizwan's program that he should be given the skull today and sit on Asif's grave for 3 or 4 days and recite the Holy Quran for a long time. At first, he expressed immense regret on Asif's tragic death. Then when Rizwan asked him to open the grave again on the night of the skull and put him in it, he was surprised. He asked, "You needed it for medical work. Why should you keep it back now?" Rizwan made an excuse and said that the college people have given him parts of the human structure, so now he doesn't need it. While telling this lie, Asif remembered that this evil skull, taking its revenge, had taken him to the same cemetery from where he had walked on his feet a few days ago and returned with a smiling skull. "Sahib," he returned to the world with the voice of Gherkin. "It is very good that you are putting the skull back. I removed this because of Asif Sahib's repeated sayings and familiarity. Otherwise, it is a great sin to do so. Even the dead become restless. Okay, Kamardun, you keep this bag with the skull and 500 rupees. You should open the grave tonight and put it inside, and put it next to the dead, and put a picture on my number. Make it and send it to me so that I am satisfied." "Okay, sir." Gravedigger grabbed the bag and 500 rupees and went to keep them in the closet of his sitting room. There, after starting his bike standing at the main gate of the Rizwan cemetery, when he turned back, he saw a grave inscription. Seeing this, his heart stopped beating. It was written on an inscription on a brand new grave. Asif Azhar, father of Azhar Sheikh, date of death 28th July. This fresh grave was the proof of revenge of the skull,